Hello and welcome to this week's Movie Math, as thank goodness we put the last slow movie weekend until, I want to say mid to late April, behind us. And thank goodness again, because January has been so brutal. But as we've been discussing, some movies have made good use of the month, and today we're going to follow up with some of those films that have run not just a sprint, but a marathon at the box office with fascinating results. Yes, we're going to talk about Jumanji and The Greatest Showman again, but some interesting new details, but also Coco. We have some interesting things to discuss about Coco. However, first, congrats to the directing duo, the Spierig brothers, for not giving up, even though they seem to be running in place. Their first big Hollywood movie, Daybreakers, hit theaters in 2010, debuting at number 4 with 15 million. Not bad. It only got to 51 million worldwide, though. And then they didn't make another movie until 2015's Predestination, which never even got beyond 20 theaters and never even hit $1 million at the box office. That's so bad! Side note, thank goodness that Ethan Hawke, who starred in both those movies, doesn't just rely on one actor-director or even actor-producer relationship. You gots to diversify those portfolios, everybody, in every situation, I would argue, but particularly in something as unpredictable as the entertainment industry. It's interesting because we talk a lot about actors diversifying their portfolios by producing other projects, but Ethan Hawke is pretty much strictly an actor, but he's able to keep going and have a very long career because, again, he doesn't just rely on one person. You don't have to do that, by the way, if you have a killer actor-director relationship that has huge dividends, like, for instance, the DiCaprio-Scorsese one, but Hawke, since he operates at a much smaller scale than DiCaprio, although he did get himself, he did not get an Oscar nomination, I believe, for Boyhood. I felt that he should have. But Ethan Hawke, he's very savvy in having a long gestating career. But anyway, back to the Spierig brothers. Last year's Jigsaw, which they helmed, and that might have seemed like a big break for them, and it was, but it ended up being the second lowest grossing flick in the franchise's 8-film history. So that wasn't so good. And now for their latest film, Winchester, which is the reason we're talking about the Spierig brothers, but that was the only new release for Super Bowl weekend, and even still, it couldn't nab first or even second place. Instead, it debuted third with around 9 million. And on that note, while Helen Mirren's involvement might be enough to get a movie greenlit, and I say involvement because she was used to pitch the film to audiences and I'm sure studios and investors, but she actually didn't star as I specified in my review. It's actually Jason Clarke's movie. But even Helen Mirren, her involvement whatsoever shouldn't be enough to get a movie greenlit, because this is the norm for films where she is, where she actually stars and where she's misled to star. So as I said in my review, Winchester was the most horrifying, I'm sure, to those who wrote the checks for it. But who would give money to the Spierig brothers or a film where Helen Mirren is the draw? Hollywood's continued inability, or anyone in the film industry's inability, to do their due diligence is shockingly ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. Anyone can go onto Box Office Mojo. It just takes a few clicks, producers and investors. Why don't you do it? Why do you let agents and everyone sweet talk you into making these ridiculous decisions? All right, so anyway, let's talk about some positive box office news, namely our long distance runners. Jumanji, of course, is the movie that seems to have an endless amount of gas in the tank. This is very unusual in today's movie landscape for a film to stick around this long. This used to happen all the time, when the blockbuster was first born in the days of Jaws, right? Because only 1 or 2 movies came out a month. The business has changed so much. But it's also created, a very high turnover rate. So for Jumanji, in its 7th weekend to reclaim the #1 spot, that's just remarkable. And the Sony flick is now up to 857 million worldwide. Domestically, it's now the studio's 3rd biggest movie of all time, topping all the Bond and Men in Black movies, again, domestically. And even all the Spider-Mans, save for Raimi's first 2. Raimi doesn't get enough credit for those movies, but you can you can erase the goodwill towards you, which we're going to talk about in just a minute for Dwayne Johnson. But first I want to point out that worldwide, Jumanji just passed Thor Ragnarok and is The Rock's biggest movie of all time, behind the last two Fast and Furious films. That's so amazing. But as I said, speaking of wiping out progress, and anyone following the stock market right now knows what that's like, but Dwayne Johnson is probably going to wipe away all of this progress he's made with Jumanji with an impressive 1-2 gut punch in 2018. He's not a businessman, and there's no shame in that, Dwayne, but you gotta realize it sooner rather than later. But anyway, let's move on next to The Greatest Showman, which also continues to impress, once again boasting the smallest drop in the top 10, also in its 7th weekend. And speaking of the number 7, it is now domestically the 7th highest grossing musical of all time. But look at those Grease numbers, though. That's $1978. Wow. And of course, Beauty and the Beast is way out there in the front. We're going to talk about Disney live-action musicals more in just a moment. But as I predicted, and one of you, forwarded the article to me, Fox is considering taking The Greatest Showman to Broadway. But even more amazing is that Disney has gotten their hooks into songwriting team Pasek and Paul. And the duo will be writing new songs for 2019's Aladdin. There's some fantastic freaking news. And they've also been attached to the live-action Snow White movie that Disney is developing. But this was all pre The Greatest Showman's release. So one has to wonder now if Disney will consider giving Pasek and Paul a film they can call their own. Can they make themselves the new Howard Ashman and Alan Menken? Oh boy, it's so exciting because we haven't had anyone since those two. And even Alan Menken couldn't keep it going past Howard Ashman's very tragic death. And how competitive, by the way, must it be at Disney right now, song-wise, with the Lopez's, Lin-Manuel Miranda, and now also Pasek and Paul. Who will be the Mouse House's favorite songwriter or writers? I think Pasek and Paul have the edge because The Greatest Showman is practically the new Frozen music-wise, while the Lopez's and Lin-Manuel Miranda have both under-delivered with Coco and Moana. I know so many of you are going to probably try and defend both those properties, and Coco has a lot of nice things that we're going to say about it in just a moment, but they're no The Greatest Showman, okay? I know, again, someone you know might be singing them, but they're not at that same level. And also, I have to say, why can't other studios write big enough checks or make big enough promises to lure any of this talent to their backlots? Disney just continues to win. And that's because they spend the money, which we're also going to talk about with Coco. Now, speaking again of Disney and Coco, that's the last flick I want to highlight today. Because despite the lack of a killer soundtrack, which is absolutely ridiculous considering it's a movie about music, but also I think about being an artist in general. That's why I think it still works. And it doesn't have bad music, but it doesn't have The Greatest Showman music. But anyway, it has passed 700 million worldwide. That puts it in the top 10 of Pixar's worldwide box office of all time, and even ahead of most of Disney Animation's recent flicks. Wow! But what's really of note here, because some of you are going to be like, we told you it was going to do well, Grace, but this is an unusual situation, and let me explain. Coco has the biggest percentage of foreign box office, 70%, of any Pixar or recent Disney animation film. And that's thanks to boffo box office returns from both China, where it made $189 million, and Mexico, where it pulled in $57 million, countries that both celebrate the dead. And while blockbusters have certainly been relying more and more on overseas box office, it seems animation could start doing the same, a strategy pioneered by Illumination Entertainment. But while many feel that foreign audiences save blockbusters not worth saving, with animation, or at least with Coco, the Despicable Me movies are good, damn it! I mean, I don't think they're as sophisticated as Coco, but they're good. I wouldn't put them in the same category as some of the blockbusters that have recently been saved by the foreign box office. Let's just put it that way. But anyway, the positive thing here is that animation studios could now be more financially motivated to depict other cultures a la Coco, if the countries that they're depicting are going to come out in full supportive force a la Mexico. And Disney just has yet another reason to love Asia, where they not only rake in the box office cash, but have 3 huge theme parks. Yep, the Mouse House invests heavily in the region and reaps the rewards. Now, speaking of investing, Disney recently, I feel, bought the favorite Hollywood Actor Award for Chadwick Boseman. He's a fabulous actor, but come on, he hasn't been in big enough movies, certainly films that didn't have a wide release in China, to earn the award. So I feel that was a financial transaction, but that's okay. The Golden Globes are a financial transaction, and they're very prestigious, but it'll be interesting to see if that early investment pays off with Black Panther's release in the country, especially since China pretty much just outlawed hip-hop culture. Now, as for this coming, that's a true story, by the way. It's amazing. As for this coming weekend, the final 50 Shades movie debuts in time for Valentine's Day, and for some reason, we're getting an Easter movie. Will Sony's bold release strategy continue to pay off? You know, nobody thought Jumanji could take Star Wars on. Maybe Peter Rabbit for Valentine's Day is a good idea. Maybe it'll play all the way through Easter. It looks pretty good to me. I'm excited for it. And then also Clint Eastwood will try to repeat his Sully success sans a big-name talent like Tom Hanks. We'll see if the casting stunt of using the real-life heroes to play themselves will work out. What are you planning to see this weekend? It'll be a very interesting weekend at the box office for sure, because Friday is going to be slow doings at the multiplex because the Olympics opening ceremony is on NBC, and surely many will tune in. So why release so many movies this weekend? Well, that's because, of course, again, Valentine's Day is on Wednesday, and all the studios are hoping that these films will get a bump because couples, singles, and even families make plans for Valentine's Day these days, and the studios, again, are hoping that it will involve a trip to the multiplex. Share your plans down below, and as always, thanks for tuning into Movie Math and going over the box office with me. As always, you can check out some more videos right now.